Welcome back to another episode of the Shaw Consulting Coffee Break podcast. Today, we're diving into the world of augmented reality, or AR, and its potential impact on social housing. With me, as usual, is Chris Shaw, Director of Shaw Consulting. Hi, Chris.
Hi, it's great to be here, Steve.
So, to set the stage then, could you briefly explain what augmented reality is and how it can be impactful for the social housing sector?
Yeah, sure. So augmented reality is a technology that superimposes computer-generated imagery or information onto like the real world view, what we see, through our eyes every day. It's relatively new. It has the potential to bring some significant changes to many industries, including social housing. So, I see it as a great tool to enable remote workforces who need some expert guidance to support them in their day-to-day tasks.
Okay, sounds interesting. Let's chat then about some of the possible benefits. First off, how does AR improve communication and engagement in the social housing sector?
So, in social housing, AR can dramatically enhance the quality and effectiveness of communication between social housing providers and their tenants. For instance, it can be used to create interactive floor plans for new properties, or even to provide information about local amenities. It makes reporting repairs or issues much more efficient as tenants can do it remotely through their smartphones. They can use their camera to provide a view of what the issues are, and they using AR, the person back in the office can then draw things on the screen or point them in the right direction and provide that remote assistance to the customer to enable them to potentially fix the problem themselves without requiring a visit from one of the operatives, which, as we know, is expensive and not as instant and doesn't get things fixed as quickly.
And how about the operational side then? How does AR benefit the staff?
There's a number of ways, really. So it serves as a valuable tool for training and providing that real-time guidance to staff in the field on how to fix a problem. So, if you think about having experts in the center and you've got a remote workforce that are going out to resolve problems in customers' properties, and let's say they're not familiar with a particular asset that's in that property, the person in the center can get a visual view of what that operative's seeing and then guide them through a process of how to fix the problem. So just like we were discussing how a customer can be supported, where we've got remote workers out in the field, in the customer's property or anywhere else, they can still have access to that expert advice on how to fix things.
And cost is always a concern in the social housing sector. Can AR alleviate some of the financial burdens? Can it offer cost savings potentially?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of the compelling aspects of AR. It helps to, one, minimize the need for those physical site visits and inspections in the first place. And obviously that results in quicker completion of tasks and ultimately saves money. But then there's the other one which I described earlier. It's difficult to recruit skilled people in certain technologies, and having a handful of these skilled people in the back office engaging with a remote workforce that might not have the detailed level of skills but is still capable of fixing things is obviously going to help to reduce the cost and also get things fixed quicker for customers. So, definitely a benefit for customers and the business.
Yeah, as you say, it sounds like a kind of win-win for both providers and tenants then. So speaking of which, how does AR improve the quality of life for those living in social housing?
I think it really can be, life-changing for those tenants, especially customers with disabilities. It enables more independent living, by offering visual aids or how-to guides, right down to their mobile devices. Additionally, the technology could be used to access education or recreational resources, turning the living room space into that multifunctional environment. We've seen, Apple's amazing AR headset launched earlier in the year, and what the possibilities are from that. that's a very premium product, and I appreciate that, that's potentially unaffordable. However, all of that expertise and that technology is going to, filter down into the consumer and into organizations who can adopt and adapt that technology for their business needs.
And could you give us some examples of how AR is already being utilized in the sector?
Yeah, I think one of these is what I touched on earlier, but I think the key thing for social housing is offering that remote assistance for repairs using augmented reality to provide the overlay of how to fix a potential problem. We don't need to wait for a customer to contact us. We could put, and some organizations are using this in another way, but we could put QR codes on appliances, the assets that are in their properties. And when they scan these QR codes, it gives them this overlay of what the asset is, what are the potential issues, and how to actually resolve those. And another example is, where we've got properties for sale or for let or for rent, we can provide, a virtual property viewing, allowing prospective tenants to explore that space without physically being there. That's a great tool for augmented reality and gives, people, a true feel about the space that they're potentially looking to move into. And I think finally, it is a great tool to enable tenants to be trained on, the safe use of the appliances and just being able to, get a better understanding of how to use things in a safer and improved way.
Okay, thanks, Chris. So before we finish, what should our listeners be doing now?
I think, if you're a social housing provider, start small, start to experiment with how this augmented reality technology can improve your services. Start to create a focus group within your organization that includes a number of frontline people, back office people, and explore some of the problems or challenges that you might have and look at how augmented reality might be able to, resolve those issues.
Okay, great. Thanks for joining us today, Chris. And to our listeners, stay tuned for some more podcasts on similar issues coming up soon.